It's live. All right, everyone say hi to the internet. Hey, I know it's a tough day where not many people watching this.
Greetings, Earthlings.
Yeah, greetings, Earthlings. And so, let's go around the
E.T.
room today
phone
and introduce
home.
ourselves. Let's
E.T.
introduce
phone
our.
home.
All right, ET, come on, introduce yourself. Come on, get your butt in here. Where's Bonnie?
Bunny got camera shy and turned off her camera for the live stream.
That's what I would like. Because seriously, I think we need to let the audience know who we are, or else they'll be like, "Who the heck is this guy hosting his show with?"
Andy,
Sensei,
Bonnie.
Want me to start?
yes.
All right. So, hey everyone, this is Andy. I'm the hoster of the show, and today I'm hosting a show about the power of the mind because so many of you guys keep asking about what does it take to calm down the wild mind. Like, does it take meditation? Does it take any of this? And what will happen if you stretch that boundary? Like, I started this is because personally I have a lot of experience with how the mind works. I used to be thrown into drugs for ADHD and Asperger, so therefore, like, I've known how what will happen if you drug yourself. So that's my experience
Hmm.
with it. So anyone else want to share their experience with the mind or how it?
Anything besides pharmaceutical?
Well, anything besides pharmaceutical, I did have some moments of astral travel more frequently when I have practiced
No, I'm talking
meditation.
about like plants.
Plants. Hmm. I personally don't drug with plants very much, except for like some incense. Like if I were to get near an incense, this is one story that I have when this one experience is that there's one time I walk into this Tibetan Buddhist shop. They were putting like some kind of marijuana like plant in they were like smoking it right inside the shop, and when I walked in and I smell it, it's like I did got moments of like hallucinations. It's like there's to the point where I almost bumped my head into like the one of the bookshelves over there. So yeah,
Hmm.
but like I know that I was hallucinating, and I was
You
yeah I
lost some
lost coordination.
awareness.
Yeah, I lost some coordination right there, and then I was like, and people were like, "Are you okay, dude?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. It's just a little weird."
How did you take it?
Well, I just smelled the smoke coming out of it, and that's when the sensation took over me.
That was some pretty powerful smoke to. Well, I mean, there's secondhand, so I guess it depends how sensitive you are to.
Well, if you talk to Joel, he will tell you how sensitive I am.
You will?
He's the one who talks to me all the time. Come on, would you not believe him? Come on.
Oh yeah.
so I have two topics or two subjects kind of sort of related to the mind and beyond that I kind of visited today. I'll share them if you like.
Oh, definitely, please.
Go for it, bro.
Okay, so the first one I'll talk about is it's this kind of ongoing um, idea that I have in all my researching and learnings. I haven't really crossed concrete, I guess, evidence to really support which of these is true or if both are true. And I mean like something that can be kind of tested and tried, not just, oh, I believe this works, but like, anyways. So, and it's this. The With my background in Christian and energy medicine, there, when I talk about food or drugs or anything that has toxicity attached to it that you're intaking into your body, um, that the question being, is it possible to do something either to manipulating the energy of the substances or the food that has toxins in it so that it doesn't hurt you, Or is it that you can manipulate the energy of yourself so that when you are intaking a substance or food that has toxins, that you can be doing taking this from a place without any judgment, and allowing your body to just use what it needs and safely and gracefully discard and eliminate that which it doesn't need, which would obviously would be the toxins and whatever else in that food or substance. So just to recap, what I'm saying is some people will do a ritual of like praying to their food or whatever before they eat, and with the intention that it served them well or whatever. But what is it that they're really doing? Are they actually manipulating the energy of the food so that it is harmless to them and only good enters into them? Or are they preparing their bodies and changing their energy and in their physiology in such a way so that it will only hold on to what the body needs and dispel whatever it doesn't need, including whatever's toxic about that food or substance or drug, or whatever the case may be? Any thoughts on that?
So is that the two topics that you are
No,
currently?
that's just one.
So where's the other one?
Oh, I just thought I'd get some feedback before I threw out change the subject.
So what about is anyone has any bets on this? Because like I personally heard a lot of questions regarding this all the time.
I'm a little bit confused. So you're saying that you are changing the way food affects you, or is it possible to do that, or?
Okay, yeah. So when I'm using the example, let's say like people who have a practice of praying to their food before they eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So or anything else that's similar in fashion to that kind of practice, where you're trying to get onto the energetics of something to create a change so that only something good is going to come into you, right? You with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
My question is, where is the change actually happening? Is it that people have the power to actually, through their intent and candid honesty, be able to change, alter, manipulate, cleanse, clear the energies of food or other substances so that any toxins that might be in them, are changed or its energy is changed so that it doesn't hurt the body? Is that what actually happens? Or is that act of prayer or changing of energy actually not doing anything to your food, but it's actually changing you or putting you in a place so that when you eat or take in these things, they don't hurt you because you're actually changing your body to only
You.
take what you need and get rid safely and with ease what you don't need and what would actually cause harm onto you.
That's a
Oh, that's
really
interesting.
fascinating question. I don't know how you would ever figure it out, but that's really interesting.
Well,
I
this guy
mean,
that I met at the Qigong place, he was talking to my mom, and then we were talking to each other. He goes by Ya Tutu, and he was basically saying that it even if you're eating like a it's an awesome name, man. But even if you're eating like like a donut, um, you can ask the donut to give me all the nutrients that my body requires, and it will just take the nutrients, the helpful nutrients. You will absorb that, and not all the say the negative um, things that are put in order to create a donut. But you'll absorb if there's anything beneficial about a donut, which I don't think so. But I'm just saying, you will take if there was anything good or the person put positive intentions into making the donut. Just for example, it doesn't have to be a donut, but
I think that
Right.
one
But
of the questions.
hold on a sec, just to add on, just to let Michael finish his point. Michael, are you saying that according to what this fellow is saying, is the change happening within the food or the donor or whatever, or is the change happening within you, the person?
Well, that's what I thought he was saying, but then he told my mom, and he said, because it's basically like talking to yourself,
Yeah.
and that's
So you
what
have no idea then.
I'm just like, I guess it goes both ways.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, you're basically, from what I'm hearing, you're basically saying that it can be both.
It can be both, yeah. It could go either way.
So, Bonnie, do you have any ideas about this?
But to me, it's more so putting the vibration in the food, because, I mean, unless you're doing a lot of visualization and meditation and qigongs and yoga and things like that, that's how you change it without food. But the food helps, and the plants and certain herbs help to get to that state.
You know what doesn't make sense? The flaw I see in that is that if you had the power to change the energy of, let's just say, go with food here, so to make it consistent and easy. If
Right.
you have in yourself the ability to change the energetic slash chemical whatever composition of the food, so that only its good attributes are going to be absorbed by you, and anything else you're just going to shit
Right,
it
right.
out or whatever the case may be. If you can do that, then why would you need the food at all if you have the ability to transmute energy to begin with? So it seems hard to me to believe that you're actually doing anything to the food or the substance itself. That it's all you. That when people are praying to their food is still the same damn thing. You're just changing how your body's going to work with it. So that's kind of what I'm
That,
feeling
that
from it.
that's an interesting way of looking at it. Be I think that's a very good point, because I never, I mean, I question everything, but that's one thing I never really,
Well, what about
that
you,
that one always
Bonnie?
slipped my mind.
What about you, Bonnie? What do you
That's a
think
good
about this?
question.
I think it's an interesting question.
I don't even think Bonnie
I
has an
don't know
answer.
the answer. I mean, let's see. I always did feel like I was changing my food. I mean, I do it with everything. Like even when I'm like have a glass of water, I'm like will wave my hand over it and say something like "I love you" or something
Well,
along those lines. And
Oh,
I mean, I
okay,
even
sorry.
put
according
intentions and things into
according to
my
Doctor, no, go
but
ahead, Bonnie.
oh, I was just saying. I mean, I even put intentions into my food often, like for energy or healing or just self love, like all these things.
I do too.
And I think that part of me at one point did come to that realization that whether or not the food is changing, like me putting that intention out before I actually eat it is still going to cause some kind of positive reaction in the way I digest it, I feel. So I have come to that like thought before, but I don't know which one it is. I
I
think it's
just had
interesting.
I just had
Well,
a
according to Dr.
little
Emoto,
revelation when you're talking about describing. It's the placebo effect. The placebo
Yes,
effect
that's
in
exactly what I
science.
knew was happening.
Awesome. You know where
Well,
I'm going.
Yeah, but
The
totally. Like
placebo,
we
yeah, I know I
like,
know where you're
way
going.
the placebo effect is real. So I did always know,
yeah,
like even when I'm doing this to my food, I'm like, this could all just be the placebo effect. But okay, well, we'll just go with it. Like,
yeah, and the placebo effect obviously being that our sheer belief in something created that change to occur. But
mm,
that wasn't something external, that was something that happened completely inside of us. So if that concept applies over to the act of prayer or onto food or anything like that, then I think that kind of answers the question. It's not doing anything to the food, it's all happening within us. Our receptivity to it and how we process it. I think that's where 100% of the action is taking place. So
Well, Joel, here's where I
Do
stand
not try
regarding.
and bend the spoon. That's impossible.
Well, here's where I stand regarding like whether does your body like program itself in such a way that gets the food out, like the toxins out of your system, or the toxins got turned into something good. Like first, it goes back to the question of who are we? What does this universe look like? Like, is it aren't we just only like made out of carbon and all sorts of those stuff that we call the flesh? Like, come on.
We are
Just tell us.
carbon units.
But like, are we? That's the question.
well, our physiology, yes. Obviously, we're
Luminous
not just
beings are we.
Right. But like, there's this theory in quantum mechanics that say that everything is energy, everything is potential, right? So doesn't the poison that comes out of like the food it's also created out of just matter and energy, but all it does is like when you recombine a certain amount of molecule. Like for example, if you want, like take methane for example, since it's a very poisonous gas. Methane is just nothing more than just a carbon and four hydrogens. And each of those hydrogen atoms and each of those carbon atoms are just they're just energies.
Wait,
That's
well,
all that is.
but when a person farts, like, isn't that methane that they're releasing?
yeah, among other gases.
Yeah, among other gases. But like, but
I don't
aren't
think
those
it's that poisonous.
well, if you inhale it to the point of like it can kill you if you
Yeah.
inhale it at large amounts. But
Methane
Oh,
is
okay, yeah.
but
hugely,
aren't
hugely more powerful than carbon dioxide, for instance.
but isn't
Okay, yeah,
but
right.
just think about it. If you perceive something as poison, it becomes poison. Because here's the funny thing about when you brought up the point about placebos. This is this is because like I personally done a lot of I also do research about this where
I
people
mean, you could
in
put
the
good
mental health.
intentions in cyanide, but I mean,
Yeah, like mental health, for example, when it comes to mental health, like
I don't think it's
there's
gonna help.
yeah, it doesn't help, but here's the thing. Like the mind I've seen that some people, like if you were given a psychotropic drug from the drug companies versus you gain the placebo, usually the placebo wins. Why? Because first off, the psychotropic drugs, it's not just simply a culmination of your efforts that allows it to heal you. It's a culmination of everyone's effort in there. Same thing with food. Is it just only you creating the food, or is it I don't know how many processes or how many people they those that food has to go through before it gets to you? What do you think?
Oh, you're definitely right. I mean, if everything carries an energetic loop trail, that when in the processing, for example, today I stopped at a place because I have a stupid card for a coffee place, and I never go to these places at all. But I hadn't had dinner, and I decided to go in and just get something stupid. And I was looking at the woman who was preparing and serving it, and she had so much resentment that she was holding on to. She did not want to be there. So automatically, felt prompted to just like ask Divine, just please deliver streams of grace and love, streams of grace and love. And I just kept repeating that to myself um, with the intention that this positive energy would flow out into that process to clear the muck that was in this place, that was going through this woman, because I didn't want that to be carried over into what I was going to be eating. So, but again, was I changing anything about
Okay.
all that stuff, or was I just changing my receptivity to it?
Well, that's the thing, like
Well, according to Dr. Emoto, his work with water shows
Yeah, you
that.
know what? That guy's been debunked quite a bit because he didn't follow any proper scientific methodology, and not once has he been able to recreate his experiments when asked to. So, yeah.
well,
Oh,
here's
Yeah,
wow.
the problem is there's no scholarly research for that.
Is there any empirical research?
well there is a little bit, like
But no controlled study is like what you're saying.
well, there's another guy who did the same thing. Is called he's Russian. He also did something where he created like this conscious.
Oh,
This
Pitar
DNA. Yeah,
Pitar
he took.
Garjumba.
Yeah, he took like human DNA, and then he like shined a laser through it, and then when he took the DNA out, it still remains the same structure as usual. That's
I've heard that the laser is being used to transplant uh, aspects of DNA from one thing into another using lasers. I've heard of that.
yeah. So I
Well,
don't know how much credibility that
it
is.
says with Pitar Garjumba, which was a Russian biophysicist, I believe, he was showing that you could manipulate or you could change DNA or repair chromosome damage through uh, the power of sound.
And in fact, here's something that you guys might not believe this,
Has
but like,
anybody
have you
heard of
ever
him?
never heard of him? But here's something interesting that I learned in psychology today in my class is that there's this research where people did on baboons where they said that if you're that the stressed out that organism is, the shorter and more deteriorating that telomere inside your DNA that allows you to repair it. Repair damaged DNAs. That's how like a lot of cells degenerate and like all of a
Yeah,
sudden
that's
we got like
familiar.
Alzheimer and all sorts of stuff.
Well, this is all kind of leading into what I was going to bring up as a second point. And from in 2003, there was a Meta Health Summit that occurred online, and I downloaded all the audios for it. And I had never listened to them though. But Meta Health is huge. It's something that was briefly covered in one of my classes in school. And there's one of the person that was interviewed from I was listening today. You guys probably heard of. His name is Bruce Lipton. Not exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, I know him.
And
from Infinite Waters.
this guy is amazing, like what he was sharing in this interview. For starters, he's been working on epigenetics for over 40
Yeah.
years. Over
Wow.
40 years. And he is pretty much made the groundbreaking work demonstrating how you can isolate the what's the name for the cells that have not yet taken specialization? The name is escaping me now.
I don't know. I just know that
Stem
he
cells.
talks
Stem
about
cells.
epigenetics.
So he
Oh, stem
would
cells.
he would take a stem cell from human tissue, and then this thing would replicate itself every 12 hours. So before you know it, you have millions. And then what he would do is he would take these and he would alter the medium on which or the environment on which the cells would live. Now, in our bodies, the cells are pretty much in a big aquarium because they're in fluid, in our plasma, in our blood. And so what he would do is he would change that same environment and find out with certain changes that stem cell, which is what all our cells start out as before they develop a specialty and become epithelial cells or become muscle cells or bone cells. They all have specialized names, so I'll keep it simple. And so changing the environment made the stem cell evolve into the different kinds of cells that they can become, whether it would be a muscle cell or bone cell, whatever. So this proves flat out that our DNA is not a black and white thing that is, this is what you're going to be. These are your possibilities. It's not like that at
It's
all.
not hardwired.
It's the environment that completely triggers what the cell expression will become. And that's at a micro level. On a macro level, then he was talking about how up until more or less the age of 7, that children are only operating with their subconscious mind, that their conscious mind is not yet developed and active. So effectively, they're just big sponges. And
Oh, that
this
makes
is the
sense.
time frame which the children are, that whether the subconscious of their mind is just being the tape recorder that it is and recording everything around them, so it develops the familiar patterns that is going to become the habits that children will enact for the rest of their lives, unless
Right.
they do some major work to change those patterns. Now, so again, that goes to show that it's all environment. And then once the conscious mind kicks in, then it was really interesting. He describes how when you do anything enough, because the subconscious works only through those initial 7 years where it literally just soaks up information and then it's got its foundation, or you use repetition. And
So really, what you're
repetition.
no, go ahead, bro. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
So
to cut you off.
then, as an adult, you would have to use repetition in order to develop new programming. So no matter how much conscious work you do on personal development and all that, and uh, at the end of the day, positive thinking doesn't change anything because your mind is operation. Only about 5% of it, roughly, is actually conscious thinking, and everything else is subconscious. So most of your processes and actions that you're doing are actually being done subconsciously. What you are doing consciously is where you enact your free will. This is where humans are set apart from lower brain capacity species, in that we can express individuality and creativity through our conscious mind, through the frontal lobe, the frontal part of the brain. And when we're doing that, everything else that needs to be done is happening subconsciously on autopilot. So,
Right.
to use a good example, you're driving, you already trained your subconscious how to drive a car, and let's say you have a passenger with you, and you guys are having a wonderful conversation. You're completely consciously just focused on this conversation that you're not thinking at all about the driving. So
Yeah,
you after 5 minutes of conversation, you got, I don't know, 10 kilometers in, and you're like, oh, we're almost here. And
oh
if
yeah,
someone were to ask you what were you guys talking about, you'd be able to tell them. But if someone were to ask you what did you drive by, or what did you see on the road while you're on your way here, you would have no idea, because that information was not being absorbed in consciously at all. So this goes to show the power that subconscious rules almost everything we do. Hence
issue.
why earlier, Bonnie, I was mentioning how the the like when we're working on reprogramming ourselves and dealing with the stuff, making changes and all that, you have to take conscious action, and it's very helpful to have people around to point out to you what you're doing, so that you actually recognize, oh, crap, I was doing that, and then you make a conscious switch to not do that and take a different action. But this is the great importance of having people be authentic and forthcoming and straightforward with you, right? To develop new programming, and definitely this is the way that
Interesting.
how people should be engaging in, in moving forward in our new era.
And
So
in
that
general, just like coaching, just having like we were talking about before we put this live, the coaching is really helping me with that whole
Well,
reprogramming.
exactly, Bonnie. In fact, this is from what you said, Joel. Here's what I
and yeah, I
experienced when
need to
I,
correct you. Don't get my name wrong. It's Joel.
yeah, Joel. Like
Joel.
to tell you the
No, it's
truth,
Joel.
like I've went through coaching and counseling before, so when it comes to like reprogramming your subconsciousness, there's a variety of ways. Like
Well,
coaches,
yeah,
they would,
hypnosis is the main way. Hypnosis and repetition are pretty much the two main ways that are commonly used. And the third one, which is more kind of newer, is energy psychology.
yeah, and like here's the funny thing, like when I study energy psychology, like
You
remember what
studied
you said
energy
about,
psychology?
well, yeah, I do it on my own time, and like here's the funny thing, like
No,
every
I'm
emo
just like,
like every emotion that you put out there has an energy, right? Well, here's the funny thing that I do when I was a kid. Like, instead of spending the time just like trying to consciously learning about math, science, and social studies all the time, and because when I was a 7-year-old, I don't even like school. But like, here's how I reprogram myself in such a way that I study calculus, algebra, geometry, and all the stuff around fourth grade. It's like I say, I will do it because I love it. And when I set that intention in, I immediately just like love this subject. Like that's what happens. And I just
you
learned
started
it like as
learning
a,
calculus in fourth grade?
yeah, I self-studied calculus in fourth grade. And it's all it takes is just reprogramming how I think about each subject. Instead of seeing them as separate things, I see them as one. They're just one concept, but just different ways of looking at it, and then bam, it's easy.
Interesting.
Well, that's definitely how to make education effective, is to take it into your own hands and utilizing the methods by which you learn most easily, rather than following a curriculum, mainstream curriculum that's like, you sit down in the class and you get lectured, or you just do simple basic reading and that's it. Like, that doesn't work for me at all. I can't tell you how much I've cheated my way through school because I couldn't.
Same here, man.
Because
Same here, man.
I couldn't learn. I couldn't learn the way that they were doing it. I wasn't taking any information.
I couldn't either.
Absorbing any of it. Now, quote me an example where you're letting me do something
I couldn't
hands-on.
connect the dots back then.
Verbal direction as I'm doing things, and you're giving visual aids, and you're engaging all the senses with special emphasis on hands-on and actually doing. Then I learn. But I can't learn through the bullshit systems that they currently employ.
Exactly, Joel. And in fact,
that's when I learned too, man.
this is how I actually taught.
I couldn't connect the dots back then
Like,
because I felt like I was only getting one side of the story.
right.
A tiny fragment.
Like, here's the funny thing. Like, here's how I actually taught some of my high school friends, is that instead of spending the time just like reteaching the concepts that my teacher taught me to do, I decided I'm going to do a little what we call a roadmap teaching, where I first like let my classmates explore some of the areas that they know, and then I tell them, okay, so you learn algebra, you learn geometry, right? Well, here's where calculus is. If you take algebra, the letters like go this much up, goes this way, add some geometry on there, and some couple of rules on there, you get calculus. And then I show them how that all correlates with one another, and bam, they already understand it. It's funny. But whenever my teacher teach it, it took like 2 or 3 hours. Me, it only took like 30 minutes to explain the whole thing.
I'm so left brain from it, so it's just like logic. They're not using any creative connection points to create a more abstract concept that someone can take in and be like, okay, I see how it connects. Now we can kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Right, and like, so your point of bringing up this concept, Joel, Joel,
See, the thing is, whenever they put anything on the TV or any documentaries or things, I remember those, and those still have an impact on me, and I can still remember information. But the stuff they drew on the board, that stuff just went in one ear out the other.
Oh, yeah. When you guys brought up those moments, it really cracked me up, because seriously, I just can't handle it.
We have to like in one polarity. You could look at the difference. I remember being in second grade, and they and like this kid, I knew him. He was rhyming, and so they were rhyming. So we're like, what rhymes with art? And they were like fart and dart. And smart. And then after that, like after that, not too shortly after that, they all got us into this one little room and made us all sit and watch this little screen where they're talking, and we just see like planes going into a building. I can remember that.
Yeah.
But all the things that they taught about algebra and things like that, tell me why I can't remember that. How I can remember the planes going into the building. There's still a learning effect.
Because our memories are enhanced when we're under stressful situations. There's a lot of studies about this.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would have to.
When we're under stress, or even like fear, which causes stress.
That makes no sense. Okay, maybe for short term,
let me find the studies. Let me find it.
I can see that being applicable for short-term memory,
it's
because
why we remember all the crazy stuff we remember. It's why we remember things when we're scared. Like it's there's been a lot of studies on it. I learned about them in several different psychology classes.
I've heard about it before.
I'm thinking about like when people are cramming for exams, for instance, and they're stressing out over it because they're overloading themselves with information, studying the night before, and that kind of stuff. They go into that test, assuming they don't blank out, they regurgitate information, and then after a day or two, it's pretty much all gone
That's
because
pretty
there's
much all
only in their
gone.
short-term memory. And that was a stressful state. So that is one instance in which would invalidate
Well,
that kind of.
I think it's like
Well,
shocking
it's
states.
the studies that they did. Oh, we remember more, and we also, yeah, it's true. When
Well,
we're
well, here's where I stand regarding
I'm
like
saying
stress hormones.
but being thrown into that, having to see that at a young age, just show me there's something not right here,
Right,
man.
right. So like here's where I stand regarding like the stress events. First off, how much of it did it impact you as a person? And how many people reinforced that memory in you? Like for example, me when I was a 10-year-old, when I first saw when I was in second grade, I saw that plane crash. I didn't even remember a thing out of that event. But the reason why I finally remembered and felt a little horrified, like about 10 to 20 years later, is because first off, I wasn't paying attention. But somehow people, like that energy that people carry, falls on, and it's like a memory.
Right.
So, and so every time when they triggered it up on me, eventually when I was conscious enough, I'd be able to like see, oh my God, it's still living in me for a while.
They said actually on that day, surprisingly, even more than all the wars and Vietnam Wars and things like that, there was on the day the whole Twin Towers thing, the Earth field, the Earth's magnetic field was actually off a little bit because of like all pretty much all the minds and the consciousness focused towards one reality, and especially they weren't in a high vibration. I mean, I'm sure the ones that were awake knew what was going on, but I'm saying for a mass majority of people, they all were pretty sad, man.
Well, that's just one part. Yeah, that's just one part of the story. But when it comes to like stress and everything, is like that's how I usually interpret it. That's why like a lot of kids, why whenever I advocate for child abuse, I always tell people that if
Wait, you
you
advocate child abuse?
no, it's like I advocate like against child abuse. That's what I meant. It's
Oh,
like that's why I told people like
be
if
careful,
you
bro.
if you happen to abuse a child, that's a felony for a reason. Because
Right.
you're not only playing with a sponge, you're playing with God Himself. The subconsciousness is more than just simply any like it's any random mind. It's the God mind. You're tampering with the world.
No, you're not. Subconscious is uniquely your tape recorder.
Right,
Mm.
but like,
Right, right.
but have you ever heard of the fact that things, that you can affect things around you, more effectively through your subconscious mind than your conscious?
Your subconscious
Yeah,
mind
that's what we're
only
talking
affects
about.
how you respond to situations. It doesn't have it doesn't have an ability to exert any kind of influence because it doesn't have a mind of its own. It is nothing but a tape recorder. You can uh, curse at yourself, be like, "Damn it, why did I do this?" Knowing that you did something out of habit, and you realize that it was just subconscious patterns that you do. And you can yell all you like, your subconscious isn't going to change anything about it because it's not a person. You can't reason with it. You can only
Right,
program.
right.
Right, but like, that's the thing about like the law of attraction is that things attract to the thought forms that we put out. So
Well,
usually,
that's
like,
because it's okay. When your conscious mind is activated about like 5% of the time, whatever you're putting out, yeah, that's what you're going to attract in terms of experience. But if your subconscious programming is completely counteracting what you're putting out consciously, you're gonna get, and especially the more enlightened you are in terms of your understanding of things. But if your subconscious programming has not been
Right.
changed yet, then you're gonna get that much more pissed off because you're gonna be like, damn it, I'm doing all this, I'm trying so hard, and I just keep failing more and more and failing worse and worse. Why? Right? It's because 95% of energy that's being put out, you're not realizing is working against you.
Right, and that 95% of the
Eat,
the
sleep,
energy
shit,
came.
fucking going to work.
Yeah, that's
5 pillars of
that's
faith.
yeah, that's what I meant. It's like that 95% must be your subconscious mind. Where else would it be?
These are all the projections of that. Now they're just, oh, how do you call it? They're just exerting its influence over your conscious mind. The way that I see the logic of it, the
Well,
subconscious onto
that's why.
itself
Yeah,
do
exactly.
influence on the external.
That's why I told you like that's why whenever I actually help with children who are abused by their parents, it's ridiculously hard. It's because first off, they were subconsciously abused at a young age, and then next thing you know, I had to really dig down to that very
Well,
part
it
of
goes
them.
into their unconscious, I think.
It was pretty bad. Like that's why like a lot of times like when you look at those who are abused, they don't look very healthy from the
Well,
outside, and
well,
even
because what they say is in some of the shamanic like that thing we went to, Andy,
mhm.
like through the experience I had when I was younger, what she said was that like your soul runs away if certain things are like too traumatic. So your soul runs away because it's not ready to handle that type of information or whatever it was, and so it goes into, and that's where you sometimes you see people that have like split personalities in certain things because like a part of them kind of runs away, their innocence or whatever you call it, like runs away, and then there's this new personality that kind of begins to kind of like develop.
Well, that is exactly what I was thinking when I also first saw you. Is like I was like I noticed like you Michael, like especially like you, man, like I noticed that you weren't who you are because like from the outside you look like a scary little boy, like you're scared. But
Scared.
after that day, I noticed that you were a lot different. Like you were growing healthier hairs and all sorts of stuff. That's just actually your subconscious mind at work. It's funny,
Interesting, man. Yeah.
but it's true. I can sense subtle differences in people very well. But like I would notice it. But like that's the thing.
What they call it
Uh,
is a soul retrieval. So it's to
Yeah.
get back the part of you that ran away during some, because I mean if things are too traumatic, especially someone at a young age, then what happens is like it becomes like a repressed memory, and then you, if it's so deep buried in the unconscious, you have to use hypnotism or something like that to get someone into a trance-like state into order to retrieve it. And sometimes, it can be a lot for the person.
right, right. And in fact, Joel, have you ever thought of the fact that when you said about giving free hugs. Here's the reason why I recommend you to hug those in the residential facilities is because a lot of times kids with ADHD and autism are in there, and like we actually been cursed to be lived under that so-called disability for life. And the thing is hugging allows you to not only generate that love energy, but also it gives that person that sense of like freedom and like a sense that yes, I am accepted for who I am. That I am safe to be who I am, and then eventually they will not only work towards being the being part of this social norm again, but also they have more faith in humanity. Like that's what happens to many kids with Asperger is that they just lost faith in humanity.
Mm.
That's their mindset. I don't know about you, Joel, about like if you ever seen one, like, But that's what my experience is when I was thrown to Asperger's and or
Yeah,
I dealt with.
I can see that. I haven't worked with people with Asperger's or autism, but I mean, having worked in group homes for persons with intellectual disabilities and schizophrenia and things like that, um, and given how they're actually treated and taken care of, it's very segregated, and I can
Mm.
absolutely see the value of that because it would be enabling human connection for them, something that they're completely deprived of. I mean, these people don't even, for the most part, these young people don't even have family to connect with at all. It's just support staff that is who that's like kind of their familiar territory day in and day out. And these support staff, there's a lot of turnover, so there's very little consistency in their lives. So they have plenty of reason to feel insecure and disconnected. So I see the value of what you're saying, absolutely.
Yeah, and like
True.
now here's another thing, Joel. Like I personally, when it
True.
comes to the mind,
So his name is
how
Joel.
yeah, like I don't understand how in the world that somebody can be able to read your mind without even you spurting out a word that coming out of yourself. That is so
Well,
weird.
it's called nonverbal communication or telepathy.
Well,
We all
yeah,
have the ability.
yeah, that's what I was asking. Like some people, telepathy is like extreme to the point where it doesn't matter what words you spill out, they already know.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to this more because before when we were talking about the North Nodes and the one the for Cancer North Nodes, they're and that's one of the qualities that they get uh, to cultivate when they are when these people are fully acknowledging their feelings and speaking their feelings always and very honestly and candidly and respecting themselves before seeing to the needs of everyone else and making sure that take care of yourself, and if you're not comfortable, speak up, be bold, that kind of thing. um, the more you express yourself in that way, the more vulnerabilities you allow to put forward. People recognize that, and then they see your authenticity, and then they naturally begin to open up. And so, as the North Node person, begins to be more clear and honest, you become more clear vessel for communication with others. And as the other person then becomes more open to communicating with you because they see how honest and authentic you are, this creates an ability for the North Node person the Cancer North Node person to be able to really tap in very intuitively to the needs of that person. And the interesting thing is that the the discipline to develop around that is that all the past life tendencies in that case is there's this huge proficiency that has been developed at being able to just know the systems of things inside out and be very proficient and just be able to tell like tell them their problem exactly as it is, and here's a solution and all that, and we can see it very clearly and very intuitively. But we can't just like come out and say it all because the person might not be ready to handle that kind of change. The person's not well, very likely might not be able to handle that kind of penetration, like you see right through to them. And it's not, and I'm not saying like, well, we need to sugarcoat things, but it's about empowering the other person. So, and being able to see and sense and get this inner knowing of what's happening with the person. It's about asking the right questions or just listening to get them to come to those realizations because they have to have ownership over that knowledge. And even though you can see it from your intuitive abilities, you can't just come out and say it. You have to enable the other person to come to those conclusions so they can own it, so they can make fundamental shifts in themselves. That's a really important responsibility piece that comes with being very intuitive and or being able to very psychically pick up on what's in the minds of other people, what's in the hearts of other people. It's it's a blessing, but it needs to be used responsibly.
So I wonder how did those people get the gifts like in the first place? That's what I want to know.
The same way you train your subconscious, actually, it's practice, practice, practice. Except in this case, we're talking about lifetime after lifetime after lifetime.
Well, I guess like from what you're talking, you did mention about like expressing yourself, your needs and everything to whoever's your opponent. So in other words, like for example, if I were to express my needs to love a child, for example, to a little 7-year-old, if I were to continue on to express that need to the point where I had to learn to be honest with that expression, of course. That's what I noticed is that the more I start expressing myself, the more I felt very light and like inside my gut I felt very light. I felt like there's nothing holding me back, and B, like after all those negative feelings are gone, I felt this vacuum inside of myself that is so sensitive that I can pick up more energy from other people. Like,
Yeah,
is that how it works?
I would say so. Because and I'm even gonna. This is sort of an aside, but at the same time, it's kind of the same principle. Um, when we are in resistance to something, we create a block. So when something's trying to make its way through, whether it's a piece of intuition, whether it's a feeling, it's going to get stuck. And it's going to get stuck inside of you because you're putting up a block. And these blocks, well, there's many. A common one would be judgment, judging something. And I'm going to use the food examples that we were talking about before because I think this applies. Let's say that you are only eat organic food because you don't want any exposure to all the chemicals and all the crap that goes into conventionally grown food. And
Yes.
and then you're going out for dinner with someone for a special occasion. You're like, shit, I don't want to eat anything from here. Nothing's organic, blah blah blah. And in that moment, you're putting up so much judgment towards the food that you're going to be served that by default you're creating a block. And then when you're eating this food, you're going to be absorbing and holding on to. Here's the key: you're going to be holding on to all the negative things that are attached to that food, the heavy metals, the whatever other toxic chemicals that are on there. You're going to hold on to it because you're judging it. So you created a block, and that block holds things in you. Now, if you're not judging and you fully accept and love, then you're only going to receive that which fully accepts and loves you back. That only, which is always that which serves your highest and best interest. So, if you were to approach that conventionally grown meal with those kinds of thoughts, and the idea would be that you're not putting up a block, you're not creating resistance. The best will be delivered to you, and the worst will not. You will not hold on to it. It will leave you. It'll pass right through you. The same thing then would apply to working with people, to interacting with people. If you're coming from a place of judgment of any kind, you're putting up a block. So you are now limiting
True.
what is going to be able to be received from the other person. You're limiting what you're going to be able to pick up intuitively and psychically from someone else. If you're approaching them from a place of non-judgment and no fear, aka a loving space, then you're an open vessel to receive whatever they transmit to you. Not to mention, the more honest and open and authentic you are, the more open the other person will likely be to also share more with you, whether it's with their words or in any other way of communicating. So,
Well, yeah. Like that's the thing, Joel, and in fact, that's the problem that I see a lot of professionals nowadays who are in the helping profession. Like, did you realize that when I see psychologists, like I've been going through psychologists 5 times in my life, and most of the time I always get that close-minded thinking from them all the time. Like, what is going on with these people? Were they trained to learn to be open-minded a little bit?
Nope.
Like, what about your experience, Bonnie? Because I've seen you've been majoring in psychology, or
A
you
lot
work
of
in
them are agents. I'm not judging anyone, I'm just saying a lot of them are agents.
like,
Well,
what
a
about
lot of
you?
them don't even realize that what they're. I mean, they were indoctrinated, and they don't know that they were indoctrinated in something that
Right.
was malevolently created.
So what about you,
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie? Because I heard I know that you are coming from the human service profession. At least you know the experience over there.
Um, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Like, what is your opinion about how? Isn't it true that some psychologists, some helping professionals like them, are coming in with this judgmental mindset when they're not supposed to?
Sigmund
I
Freud wasn't like
think
that.
everybody's different. Um, let's see. Sorry, I was zoning into this homework I was doing, and then Joelle was talking about something that I was interested in, and then I don't know what we're talking about now. What's the question?
Joel Osteen.
Well, I was
No,
asking
I'm
about
kidding.
like, is it true that not every psychologist or social worker, human service agents, aren't they supposed to be creating this so-called sacred space where you love your clients and not to judge them? Like,
It's supposed to
isn't
be
that,
that way.
yeah,
Yeah,
Andy,
and
can I,
nowadays,
can I offer you something, Andy, for a sec? Or Bonnie,
yeah.
if you have a thought, go ahead.
no, go for it.
Okay. And you think of it like the pharmaceutical industry. They're a business. Their business is making money. Their product is drugs. They make money off of selling drugs. So when a person is ill, the doctor's job, the pharmacy, is dispensary, his job is going to be to sell you drugs so they can make some money. Now, if the purpose of those drugs was to heal you, then they would no longer need to sell you anything because you'd be healed slash cured, and they would lose business from you. So, in order to ensure their business, they don't only treat things. They never look at any causal factors to actually cure you or heal you, right? This is the same thing that would then be happening with this within the realm of conventional psychology. You're not going to be trained to help people heal and cure themselves because then you're going to be out of the job. So you're just going to run circles with patients so they can just manage but still stay debilitated and still seemingly needing to rely on your assistance because that's what happens when people are disempowered. They're disconnected from their own ability to heal, and they're looking for an outside source to help. And when you're looking for an outside source to help, then you become a market share for anybody who wants to make money off of whatever methodology or tool they use for treatment.
Yeah, that's what I realized.
Edgar Case didn't do that.
Yeah, that's what I realized. A lot of mental disorder, people with mental disorders, like I noticed, like they weren't the same for life. Once they like were told that they have like anxiety or all sorts of crazy stuff like that, like they weren't the same anymore. That's a funny thing.
Not to mention when you're taking things like drugs that
Oh my God, yeah.
whatever they treat, they just create another problem to be addressed. So it's a never-ending cycle as long as you continue to operate at from a place of disempowerment.
Well, that's the thing. Like I noticed how like a lot of times, like I was like, how come there's not many articles regarding like healing autism, ADHD, and all those stuff when you
Well,
know clearly
you're
it?
not gonna find that in North America because here everything is so filtered so that the truth of what's actually available and possible is kept from the masses, and you have to really go. You have to take initiative and go look through non-standard channels of information to get at these things.
alternatives.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
and
but
like,
you go over to Europe, I mean, it's it's the same but different. It's different in the sense that there's a lot more that is considered in their in their streamlined curriculums.
In
Um,
Europe?
yeah,
yeah, especially France. Like I noticed, France psychiatric and psychological care, they were a lot more holistic than us.
I think that the United States, I'm gonna say North America, but really, the
I
United
see.
States,
I thought I was
they
the only
are
person.
they are the armament of the elites. So they pay special attention to making sure that North America is highly subservient and highly manipulated and mind controlled so that they can be the mindless drone army that the elite wants to use. Just today, I was looking at a video that someone posted on Facebook, and within like the first 5 minutes, it was talking about the militarization that's happening in the United States. The police is being armed to the teeth as if they're soldiers in a war. So
Wow.
what's
What?
that going to translate to? That's going to translate to them seeing the average citizen as an enemy because they have all this toys and all this power. It's going to go straight to their heads. Then it was showing specific examples of how they were treating people. They were busting out a drug house, and these severely obscenely armed police people were came in, tasered one of the men without reason. And this was all on camera, without reason or provocation. They tasered him twice, and shortly after he died. Another example. There was a woman that was arrested. I forget for what, and they completely stripped her of all her clothing. And while they may sometimes do that to check, clothes for things, they were doing it in a humiliating fashion. Made her walk naked across the jails to an isolation room where they left her naked for 7 hours.
That's fucked
And
up.
there's more examples that I saw in just like these first couple of minutes. But I mean, I knew things were bad in the States, but seeing that video of like kind of more recent happenings really kind of blew my mind a little bit because I didn't realize just how bad it actually is.
I was happy to hear you say North America, because I don't even say United anymore. I say, I don't know. I don't feel it's truly. I feel I feel North America is a better term.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I just remember one of the other things. So another piece of legislation they want to pass is installing is having GPS units in every motorized vehicle so
What?
that you are charged for every mile that you ride, as if gas isn't expensive enough, so that you'll be charged for every mile of gas for taxation purposes. And that also then raises a lot of privacy issues because now they would know where you are, when you're there, and everything. So you can see where this is going. It's martial. They're trying to take steps for martial law. And without living in the states,
When did you read this?
well, I just ran into all of it today. Maybe I can find the link on my Facebook feed, but the it goes to show that this is what's playing out, and it's not surprising to me because when I started researching, kind of like, uh, quote conspiracy stuff of what was coming down the pipeline, this is what was forecasted to be happening in North America, in the United States. North America, I mean, within Canada, Canada is just and people here they don't really seem to generally care very much either. Uh, we're just like the state's little cousin up north, but
Right.
states is really where everything seems to start. And people, if people don't actually take back their power seriously, there's going to be some really shit storms coming down in that country very soon.
Well,
Yeah, and I.
in Canada?
No, and you're down there in the states.
Yeah, that means us, dude. Austin is I
Well,
think you mentioned
you
something
know,
about it.
I mean, I was watching the '60s documentary, and I just remember seeing like how okay, some of them did not end up in good condition. Some of them really got hit, but I just remember that spirit and how revolutionary like a lot of the people that were promoting peace were, and I mean they were pushing back at the cops and certain things, and because there were so many of them, they were actually doing pretty good. Some of them got pretty hurt, but I just that spirit, you know, and because there were so many of them, it was hard to stop them. And there was more people promoting peace than there were cops, and so yeah, man, if it gets too much, I don't know how much longer I can be here, man.
Well, it's
It's
okay,
I'm
dude.
going.
it's
I found the link on my phone. I just have to email this to myself, and I'm gonna post it here for you guys if you feel inclined to check it out. It was just kind of really mind blowing to see these things happening. Like it really, it's disturbing.
otherwise we're gonna have to do a Neo, and then it said, and all that shit they talked about, and and to try and stop this violence and this doing this Martin Luther King thing and marching and all this, if this isn't helping, they want a war like in that Toy Soldiers movie. We'll give them a war. If Major Chip Hazard wants a war, we'll give him a war.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying these things not to for fear mongering, but really just to be aware, to
Oh, I know.
to, these can be catalyst points for people who will normally wouldn't care. I mean, like, seriously, check this out, people. Like, do you want yourself to be at the receiving end of this in the future because you did nothing to say no at a time where you can still say no and not be like, tasered?
That's yeah,
Well,
man. And I mean, that's almost like a Nazi state.
right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. Did you that's the reason why Joel when I wrote this one letter to a child, and this one I sent it to Michael and Bonnie already. Like I guess you guys read it before, but like I wrote in the letter that I was angry at myself because I was that I cannot protect you, child. I always say that in front of like as though that child is right in front of me. And I told him that I made a promise that I will do whatever I can at all costs. That includes losing my life for it. And when I start saying that, I suddenly felt like deep inside my heart, it's all that strong emotion just burst out. I felt like I'm so relieved, and I felt like I'm ready to like crush everything or anyone that dares to get in my way. Like I wonder if that feeling is that like
I
something
mean,
what
that's what we came in with, man. I mean,
that's
I
what
think it's just crazy because it's just like have all this thing, we have this thing, and we contracted to to come down here and all this, and we're supposed to meet our twin flame and all certain things like that, and then you have shit like this, uh,
That's why
attempting
you need
to.
to have really need to work on everyone really needs to work on having a balance between being connected to those higher states in the right brain and being having the logical discernment of the left brain so that you can
Mhm.
do the final component, take right action. Really well guided, thought out, intuited action.
well, that's the thing, Joel. Like that's what I was trying to like know this really really long time. I don't know if there's any way to explain this in biological terms that the audience can understand, but like what is enlightenment? Because the thing is so many times we've been taught that this state of enlightenment or this state of oneness is always like this blissful land that I have no idea about or how it envisioned it is, but like, is
You know,
it
Andy,
it
I know you brought this up once before, and we didn't
is it
necessarily reach a conclusion, I don't think, but maybe we overcomplicate this concept because it's so seemingly beyond us. But to really simple, and let's just like really simplify it, what do we naturally do, or what's our natural thing to do without really doing anything? It's
Well,
to grow.
yeah, to grow, to
To
love.
evolve.
Exactly. So, what is enlightenment? Is to continuously evolve and grow. And whenever you are ceasing to do that, then you're stopping yourself in your tracks from reaching enlightenment.
Stunning your growth.
Well,
Exactly.
right, but like that's what I don't get about why so many these beings they describe enlightenment as some kind of blissful pure land, when in reality it's just you growing. Like I don't get where the
Because
bliss came
there's
from.
Well,
qualities.
because you find that bliss inside you.
There's qualities to growth. You can be you can be growing blissfully because you're in touch with what brings you joy and passion and authentic expression of yourself, or you can grow in lies and convince yourself that you do things because just because you got to do them, or um, because someone else is relying on this, and then you're still doing it, but your growth is really quite stunted, and that's the word I was looking for, stunted growth, in which you're
Oh,
kind of
okay, okay, okay.
in which you're kind of looping yourself in a cycle. And the whole point of the enlightenment then is to bring yourself out of these cycles and evolve beyond that and be more.
So it's almost like
True, true.
how do you
Well,
let me see here. In psychology, that's what we call motivational growth then, or the growth mindset.
Sounds fair.
Yeah, it
well,
sounds familiar to me.
when you look at the people that were, no, I mean, I haven't looked that deeply into it, but when you look at the people that were like in concentration camps and certain things, they later tend to become like abusive or very abusive. And I'm just saying to go through that and you look at the things that the Native Americans went through and all the certain things, it's just like I feel we should be just so beyond this, man.
I know. But like that's the thing. Like, did you guys realize, like, from what you guys said about like how this mindset of the world affected us all? Well, here's what I noticed is that a lot of people like you guys, when they first got out of the Matrix, they weren't that pretty at all. Like, I personally felt a little, what we call it, disgusted from looking at some of you guys. But after a while, when you guys are starting to really
You
get
know, if
into
we
it
had
and really
lightsabers,
like if you guys were to put your mindset into changing yourself, I start noticing directly that I felt more attracted towards you and less have to fear you anymore. That's the weird thing. Like,
had to
did you
fear who?
notice that? I like for example, you Michael. I when I first met you, I noticed you were a little reserved, and I wasn't have the energy to talk to you because like I know that a reserved person, I'm not going to get near him. But when I noticed the change, I start seeing that your physical body got stronger. You gone a lot darker, like I am right now, and you've gone a lot healthier. And I was like, wow, you've changed. And not only that, you're more open, and I can talk to you more often. Do you notice that?
I've observed that
Interesting.
Yeah, you
Michael
do.
is appearing also a little less split personality.
Wait, say that again, Joel?
I've also observed that you seem to be a little less split personality like.
Split
Oh,
personality. Yeah, I know.
thanks.
Same thing here, you know. I also Joel knows that I have a split personality also, and it was like one side is like this mystical Andy who just came out the who just came from the earth and he knows enlightenment, and this other Andy is like this little child.
True.
It's funny, but
Well, I
like
mean, I don't know. When you first met me, Andy, I thought like you really like respected or appreciated me.
well, that's the thing, which is why like sometimes whenever I saw you a little anxious, was like I need to back off a little bit because seriously, like it seems like you need to. I felt like you're telling me you need to work more on yourself, and I'm not ready for you yet.
What was that though?
That was like the first time I met you. You were
Oh,
like,
well, there
yeah,
was a lot I was going through, man, with the whole massage thing and that dude.
yeah,
So
yeah. I was like, I don't know your life event or what happened to you personally, but I already sensed something like this is going to happen. So I was like, I'm, I can't talk to you right now for a reason. That's why, like, whenever Joel told me about like how I'm a sensitive person, he was right.
well, that's really the only reason I back off usually. Or I don't get. I mean, it's difficult for me to be in like places with like large groups of people or like mixed, like a whole bunch of like mixed emotions. Like I have to put on a shield. I have to like either shield myself or I need to like get out of the place because
Yeah, like
it's too
here's
much.
here's the thing, Michael. Have you going back to what I don't know about you, Bonnie, because since you've been silent the whole time, but
Bonnie.
have you guys noticed how in psychological counseling, like do you guys realize how important venting really helps? Because I've noticed some clients just because I let them
The
vent their
talking
problems.
method.
And yeah, like when they vent their problems at me, they yell at me, and all of a sudden, and when I ask them, are you done, or do you wanna, are you still angry at me? And that person said, I'm not angry at you. And so I said, can I give you a hug? And next thing you know, they would embrace the whole thing, like they would pull my body close to them.
That's
So what was your question,
interesting for
Andy?
psychotherapy.
Oh, like
Everybody really just wants to be understood. If you notice, once someone feels understood, they feel like they can let go of whatever it is they're holding on to. So, reflectively listening to people and mirroring back what they're saying is like an incredibly
yeah.
healing technique to do with someone.
I noticed, but like here's the thing that I don't realize is that sometimes when they endured that pain for so long, when you lift that pain off of them, they just all of a sudden felt so relieved. They just don't know what to
Andy, you're not
say. And
lifting any pain off of them. All you're doing is holding space for them to feel safe to lift their own veils. That's
yeah,
it.
I don't know what I did. I told them that I was just giving them a space, but somehow they were like they felt so relieved to the point where they just want to cry right in front of me.
And well, they should. It's a nice way to physically get out all of that. See, we build up toxins in our body when we hold in stresses and emotional traumas and emotional stresses. So crying is I find to be a very therapeutic release of those chemicals that are actually being held in the body. I always
Yeah,
It
like
it
to
is.
is.
cry.
It's
But
It
like,
is.
free.
here's the funny thing. If you guys
It's kind
release,
of
if you guys release that toxin, you can like pee it out or dump it out, but does it have to go to the point where you like I've seen some people who start having red bumps on their skins and like they start throwing up,
Yeah, this is
vomiting,
normal.
like
This is normal. Whenever anyone does any kind of emotional detoxing or physical detoxing, they often come hand in hand if you're doing it to any sort of degree of any reasonable intensity. The physical detoxification releases these chemicals, these toxins that were created when you were enduring stress that the body hid away in your body's tissues, mostly fat cells, but other tissues as well. And when you're detoxifying your body, these toxins become released, and the body's goal is then to eject these things from the body. But while it's doing that, you're going to be experiencing these things that these chemicals were initially created from your experience. Now, the positive side of that is that when you're doing this excretion process, it's a lot more short lived than when you're undergoing the initial experience. But either way, the whole point is you are creating that space for this to be released to occur, is fundamental to healing. And holding space for people to express enables them that opportunity. And this is why we just mentioned it earlier, but we didn't talk about it. Energy psychology is really probably the most, at least that I'm aware of, revolutionary method of enabling releases because it's the most painless and graceful and quickest. You're doing the same thing. You are creating a space for the person to do what they neglected to do in the first place, and that was to take ownership over the intensity and the trauma that they were experiencing. And the reason I use the word take ownership is because we're all absolutely responsible for everything we experience. Not just the stuff. It's not just the stuff that we attract into our experience. Law of attraction, all that kind of stuff. But the actual events themselves, they're necessary for our growth into the next stage. And if we suppress that, we're just going to keep doing like we said before. So you're going to be cycling through the same thing over and over again until you finally do something different. Until you take ownership of the fact that you did not learn your lesson the easy way, so it had to get harder and harder and harder for it to get your attention, and for you to finally break and do what you needed to do in order to do something different the next time around.
Right, and like here's what I read on this energy psychology that you are talking about. It's almost like what we call acupressure for the emotions. By tapping energy points on the surface of the skin while focused on the mind on specific psychological problems or goals, the brain's electrochemistry can be shifted to quickly help overcome fear, change unwanted behaviors, enhance the ability to love,
Yeah,
succeed, and
and
enjoy
and
life.
Andy, I don't even know if you know this, but the the all the tapping stuff like emotional freedom technique and things like that, that isn't even necessary at all. It's necessary for the person who has a belief that they feel like they need to be physically doing something in order to make a release happen. But if the person has brought themselves to an evolved point enough that they don't need the showy stuff, the trickery, the tools, and
Hmm.
just actually bring into consciousness that which was suppressed, we can simply use affirmations and guide a person through the use of affirmations and narrating the story of the stuff that they went through in a way that they now take ownership over that, and give permission for that release to occur and surrender that to the divine, to the creator. Then that's it. It's done. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
how.
what I noticed, Joel. Joel, like when you told me about like that stuff is it goes back to the concept of storytelling. It's like I've noticed how some form of psychotherapists they would use storytelling to actually connect with clients that have like certain subconscious problems. And next thing you know, when you speak it in such a way that the client relates so much to, not only did they trigger up some anger coming out of them that they never did before, but like certain unwanted stuff just went away. Just
Yeah. Well,
in
no,
that
it
moment.
doesn't go away, Andy. Triggering up the story is step one. It's so that we have something to work with. What are we working at? What are we trying to release here? Once that's on the surface, then the next step has to be taken, and that's taking ownership over the fact that you made choices in less enlightened ways, in habitual ways that at the time were serving you, that you were keeping you safe, but they're no longer serving you now to the point of where you want to raise your consciousness to. And then you making that conscious decision, you take ownership, and literally the practitioner guides the person through certain affirmation processes that are quite effective at navigating these changes.
Oh,
And for
that's
someone who is intuitive, an intuitive practitioner, and even the client themselves, whether they are a feeling person, a seeing person, a hearing person, whatever, like you can sense a shift occur.
right, right.
Like
And
this was last year. I did a 3-month program on this subject exactly, and Unfortunately, I didn't really maintain the practice, like with for looking for clients to work with that stuff. But I audited the program again this year just to kind of get it more into my conscious framework so that I can work with it more. And and now this year, after a year of working on myself, it's like I see the value of this and how it can work. But it'll only work to the degree that the other person is first willing to cooperate and B, willing to take responsibility for it.
Okay, so like, how do you know if your client is taking responsibility for whatever emotion it is? Because the thing is like I had some members that I work with. Some of them are like they keep going back to the fact that they can't change their past and all sorts of stuff, and they keep
Well, and
telling me like,
there's a lot of there's certain things that will be at work that will prevent changes from occurring, such as blocks, of which there are many types, including allergies and intolerances. And there's psychological reversals, there's resistances, and in terms of navigating through all of this, like, I mean, I have a protocol I follow that I learned in my program. And so it's a series of navigating through that, and how we actually measure it is through muscle testing.
hmm,
That's,
muscle
yeah,
testing.
that's
Like, so how do you
muscle testing
know?
is pretty good.
So how do you know if like your client is holding accountable or accepting the responsibility of what he or she is doing with?
Once I went through the baseline testing to determine that I'm getting accurate responses from my client, it would be as simple as asking my client to repeat after me. I take full responsibility for all my actions. And if I get a weak response, then I know that statement doesn't hold true for them and they don't genuinely believe that.
But like, what if there is no way? Like, for example, me, I don't have like the machines to test if my clients are holding accountable for
Well,
herself
I'll
or
tell you two
himself.
things. For one thing, you're an intuitive person. You could probably figure it out. For a second thing, if you're interested, go learn muscle testing. I guarantee you, you look around, you'll find some place that teaches you how to do it.
Okay, let me see if
That's what she was doing at that a shaman illumination thing we went to. Hey, that's what she was doing.
Yeah, it's nice to have these backgrounds with different schools of practice and thought. And for me, it's been really wonderful because I see the cross correlation between all these practices, and I kind of see like the common mechanism that connects them all. So for me, that validates this kind of healing work.
That's interesting. That's a good way to. Because what I saw with muscle testing is that, like, which with each person that I went to, which was a couple, they did the muscle testing and asked me, okay, do you ask? They would ask like what I was afraid of, or do you believe this about yourself, and then they would test. And whenever it was weak, they would take that as like an like like not affirmative and then what I believed, but then when it was stronger, it was just like I was affirmative in what I believed.
Yeah,
So it
the
was really
because muscle testing works by uh, intent. It's whatever I tell whatever mind I want to work with, whether it be conscious mind, subconscious mind, and conscious mind. Uh, I simply state on the outright that your arm will hold strong to a yes response or to a no response if I want to do it that way. Or I could say that your arm will drop if you test weak to this or if you're intolerant to this. If you hold strong to this, that means your body has no adverse reaction to it. So you can actually change it up quite a bit. And also, prior to actually entering any testing, there's a protocol that you have that one needs to go through to ensure that you're going to get accurate results. This involves testing that your polarities are not inverted, otherwise you get mixed results. Testing that you're
Joel?
grounded enough, otherwise that will also throw off results. You cannot be using having any equipment on you, things with batteries and things like that, that will throw off your polarities. Even standing under some fluorescent lightings for some people can throw off your polarities.
Dude, I'm super sensitive to lighting. Sorry.
Oh,
Like,
buddy, it's
Okay.
okay.
Oh
Like
yeah.
And
I'm
then
just
there's
like that too,
also
you
other
know.
things that the conventional, perhaps more conventional muscle testing wouldn't even consider, unless the more spiritually inclined aspects, such as corruption. And corruption can take the form of any spirit or entities that are piggybacking off of your habits and emotional states that don't want you to change your habits, because then that means they don't can't feed off of you. So
Okay,
that's another thing. If we're getting mixed results, and polarities are balanced and you're grounded, and then we have to see, is there corruption happening here? And then, because this is like higher level stuff, this is where when I'm working on that level, then I'm working with divine, and I'm literally surrendering this to divine, because divine knows how to handle this. I don't. I can't do anything on that level, but I can ask divine, please, can you clear this? Yes or no? No, okay. Can you contain this energy for the duration of the session? Because maybe there's a lesson in for you and the spirit or whatever that you're learning together, and it's serving. So divine isn't going to intervene in that, but it will for the duration of the session, because that does serve the higher interests of the client. So there's a lot of layers to this, and it really takes quite a bit of practice and savviness to navigate through all these possibilities.
right, Joel. Like, here's what I noticed when you talked about the muscle thing and all the stuff about how do you know if your client or your members or whoever it is you're working with in the helping profession, if they're holding themselves accountable. Here's this one newsletter that they said those who are not uh, holding accountable for themselves, they usually make excuses. They tend to worry a lot. They tend to self-doubt and lack of self-awareness. They have this what we call Debbie Downer syndrome. That means you can't change past situations, you can't change other people and all sorts of stuff. And you also have the desire to win at all costs, which means you don't show your self-confidence. You're insecure, that's what you mean.
Yeah, what's actually at the root of all that is another question that I was asked as part of my baseline testing. Is I would get the person to repeat after me and saying, I have a desire to change this behavior or change this belief. Because you may see that the person thinks they want to fix this, but in reality, they actually have a greater desire to hold on to it, because it's more easier and comfortable for them to continue doing what they've been doing, and they're not actually ready and wanting to heal.
Yeah, exactly. And like to explain it to Bonnie and
Interesting.
what he meant, what Joel meant by that, that means like the person is still stuck in that pre-contemplation state, uh, but not ready to move on to this what we call contemplation. That means the stages of preparing for change and making uh, progress.
That's like in the Matrix where Morpheus is just like, this is the image, projected image of your digital self.
Yeah,
And then Neo was just like,
yeah, that's what.
no!
Yeah, that's what Neo is like before he actually knows that he is somebody else in the Matrix. It's like I guess like some of you guys watched the Matrix show or
I've
the
had
beginning.
conversations with people like that, man.
Like here's what happens is that Neo, when he first learned how to train how to fight, he just never hurts the Morpheus at all. Like you see that kung fu scene. But when he really learns how to like learn to take accountability that he is strong and he can do it, he can change all that. Next thing you know, he lands a direct hit.
I know kung fu.
That's the miracle of life. It's like sometimes it's gonna sometimes like taking accountability just means that we have to accept the fact that we're more powerful than we think we are.
Yeah, it's kind of like taking it along baby steps, because some people need that. Their change threshold is so small, because they have had perhaps so much trauma that they've dealt with that they just cannot handle large
Right.
degrees of change.
Right, but like that's what I don't understand is like why fear your own powers when you're supposed to be glad that you have so much?
It's because the our neurology can only handle so much change. It can't just go from A to Z. If you're an A, you can't go to Z, but you can perhaps maybe go to C or D. Most people, and I know maybe once you're there, then maybe you can go to Z, or maybe you still need to go all the way to N or P before you get to Z. You
Well,
can't
Z is
do
like
it
an extreme of the polarity, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
Looking at
that's
full restoration of
right, but
reclaiming
like that's what I
where
don't understand.
So
It's
it's
like,
just like maybe.
you know. So Andy, you don't understand where neurology has limits
I mean, like, why are we fearing our own unlimited ability?
Mm, that's an extreme for them. And they may do it for a couple of days, but then they'll fall back like,
Is it like because
a week or so
is it
afterwards.
because like they fear like they don't deserve it, or is it because something, or what type of mindset is holding our race back, human race back? Like that shouldn't be a problem. We've been doing this for thousands of years already. Look at the
because for thousands of years our race has been programmed to be subservient and give up its power.
oh,
Yeah.
so in other words, we gave up. We sold our
We had them for a
sovereignty
little
to the
while.
devil. Let's put it that way.
Figuratively speaking, yes, that's what the Age of Pisces was all about. Let's experience hardship by rendering ourselves in belief and not having any concrete knowing and empowerment. And we'll just let others make decisions for us.
We had the powers for a while.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like we have the power for a while, and
But
like
that
we can
whole
go from
the
A to Z.
goddess movement and all the thing, and when
Yeah,
paganism was really big,
yeah, but
that's
then
when the powers were showing up. But then there was another group that just was like the opposite in polarity, I guess, and it's.
like that's what I notice a lot about like some the psychologists is that whenever they don't hold accountable for their clients or like something happens, they always like I walk into their office and I can notice like they start worrying more often. And like some of their clients mimic the same behavior. Like that energy just lingers on, and I can pick it up. And I, whenever I talk to a psychologist, I just couldn't talk normally. I usually had to get angry and I had to lash at him most of the time.
Didn't you ever hear that song? In every life we have some trouble, but when you worry you make it double. Don't worry, because you just add on to it. When you worry doesn't change anything. You need a
Like
doing.
that's the thing. Like
Well, it actually does. It creates. See, even when we talk about like doing things in cycles and patterns that repeat themselves, it's not a circle.
Hmm.
It's a it's a it's just like a cyclone or a vortex. You're either sorry a spiral, and you would know this if you are familiar with shamanic understandings, that your spiral towards growth spirals upwards. But as it circles, you're having a different experience, but with similarities across each layer. But there's layers because it's always kind of moving up a little bit, and that's how you're growing. Same, the inverse is also true. If you are repeating your patterns in a negative way that are breaking you down, they will continue to break you down into a worse and worse state until eventually you lose your life force and die. But you are always changing. That's the interesting thing. We're always in either growth or degeneration.
right,
True.
Joel, and that's like that's what I want to know is like how can I help change that environment? Like the next time whenever because here's the funny thing, every time whenever I walk into those environments when I know that somebody is not holding accountable for themselves or like some of the members that they do counseling with, that organization or that help that psychologist office, it feels so much. I felt so much pain in my belly to the point where when I talk to him, either A, I would get angry and lash at him, or B, I would not get into his office, or C, I would get severe diarrhea that day. How can I be able to like help
Oh.
change that environment before it took a toll on me
Andy,
or took a toll on anyone
are
else.
you asking how you can hold that in space for people that come to see you?
Like that's hold that space for somebody to see him, like the psychologist. Because the thing is every time I came to that psychologist like 3 days in a row, and I always got that same symptom, and I
Well,
just couldn't hold it any longer.
if you're the one going to someone seeking help, it's not up to you to be holding space. If you're the one looking for counsel, it's their job to be holding space. If they're not doing that, and you're going there to teach them how to do that, then they're the patient, not you. Do you realize the craziness of what you're saying?
Then I guess like they're just holding the title of a therapist, but they are themselves clients.
Pretty much.
Boy, that sounds pretty ironic because seriously, I had to admit that's why I don't get why in the world is that so many times our system is like so into school that whenever like if you were to counsel someone, it you had to really get a PhD or like a master's to do it. That doesn't make any sense. You
And
can
I've told you this many times, and hope this will be the last time I have to say this. This is all done by design with a very specific intention of keeping people disempowered. This is why education is tailored to keeping people dumbed down, run through the hoops, do all the show, and then you're properly indoctrinated, not to mention a lot of debt, most likely, so you have to work it all off. Just do what they want you to do, which is keep people in the dark, keep them disempowered, keep them sick, whatever your profession is. This
that's
is
what yeah, that's what I
designed.
noticed.
So
Like
that's why it is. You don't ever need to question why your therapist does this, why they do that. They're victims of the circumstances that everyone has collectively allowed to be created because we've all given up our power to governments, to authorities, to education, to churches. The list goes on. Are you
right.
following?
Yeah, and like that's what I noticed is like the higher you are in the hierarchy, the more the system values you because you are like on their side and not on the human side.
Yep.
And like that's what I notice a lot of times whenever I talk to PhD people is like they tend to be cocky and everything. Like I notice a lot of them tend to be cocky and they think they know better off than anyone else. And when we talk to
No,
them,
they're
we
usually in the
figure out
greatest of
their
imbalances.
like I notice they have like more they were indoctrinated, but they're not any smarter than us.
No, they're not. They're really high up. They are extremely imbalanced towards their left brain. They are completely disconnected from human emotion. They have no idea what empathy and sympathy are. Their only motivation is survival and control.
But like now
Oh,
here's
yeah.
the thing, because since I don't know if I'm going to get my PhD or my MD or ND, I don't care what degree it is, because personally, if I'm not indoctrinated, I don't really care. But what matters is how can I be able to remain indoctrinated when I get my ND? Like, do you have any ideas when you were in college?
Your question didn't quite make sense to me.
It's like, how can you go through college studying all these great stuff or great knowledge that you were talking about without getting indoctrinated into the so-called education system in such a way that
You can't.
you know,
Once you're at a higher point in consciousness and you confront untruths, then you will not adopt them into your being. You will question them. You will not follow in them because you know in your heart that it isn't true, it isn't right.
because that's the thing. I want to make sure that as I get higher up into my PhD, I'm not going to be more indoctrinated, but instead I become less and less indoctrinated and become more and more free. That's the
And you won't be, Andy. As long as you stay true to yourself and to your divine self, you will stay on the path. And if anything, you will enter into a position where you can exert greater influence into changing the field altogether. Because you'll have danced through their hoops, and you will have their fancy papers, and then so you may be held in a certain esteem because you went through all their things. But then when you're actually doing your practice, you do it your way. So the entire time you've been just hacking their matrix.
Oh, okay. So here's what you mean by this. It's like I guess you mean like I had to first like learn to be connected to yourself at an early age. And then second, as you're being connected, use the opportunity that people indoctrinate you to strengthen that connection. And then whenever you jump over the hoops, you keep building credibility on whoever the system is. And when by the time you already reach to the top, they mistaken that you got indoctrinated by those systems. And next thing you know, when you had your chance, you you rain all that good stuff into the bad system, and eventually it's going to change from the top to bottom, depending on
Pretty much.
how
I mean, you
you
can
get
be
it.
transparent about it, or you can hide the fact that you understand what they're doing. Also, your level of connection to yourself and your divine self is completely independent of your going through their hoops and the whole quote
Because
indoctrination process.
that's what I noticed when I looked over some of the professionals over on yeah some of the founders of transpersonal psychology and some of the great minds at PhD today. Like I had to admit, if it wasn't for those people who have been connected to source and got their PhDs to actually exert that influence, counseling psychology wouldn't even improve by now. I don't even know how would that happen. But like it happened already. We have transpersonal psychology, we have energy psychology. It all came from those minds.
And it will continue to grow and evolve. I can only
Yeah,
imagine what 40, 50 years from now, what technologies and methodologies will be available to completely uh, facilitate people's transformations and healing so that there is no bullshit to work through anymore because we're done with that. As a race, we're just so done with this bullshit.
like that's the thing. Like that's why like I want to know like how the mind works at the deepest core, so that way, or like how can we work with it? Because our when we know how deep our minds is, we will know like for example how like if we were to tap into the power deeper within us, deeper than the BS that people ingrain into us, then the less likely, then the more likely we can uproot that BS before it poisons the wells. You know.
Yeah, well, that's what our job is to make those strides, not wait for them to happen.
Right, but like that's what I don't understand about the mind is like how deep is it? Is it like some Buddhist some religions like Buddhism, they always say that the mind goes through when you're in enlightenment, you're like going through this 9 stages of enlightenment where there's different symptoms to it. Like for example, at the very last one, you will have to you'll get to the point where your subconscious and conscious mind is no more separate to the point where like you start when you manifest something good or bad, it happens right away physically. You can see it.
Joel, what you said was so genius, man.
Like, do you have any ideas about that? Like, for
His
example,
name's Joel.
some people do
Yeah.
Joel.
like some people do magic so well, like magicians. Like, I don't know if you would uh would say that's a normal thing from our human race, Joel, because the thing is I never
The Book of Joel.
like
I'm kidding.
like
And
what is your
I think
take
you
on the
focus a
mind?
little too much on the how of things. You just really switch your focus into your own natural progression with all of this and the field that you're interested in and that you're growing in. You just recognize things for what they are. People are playing the role of victim of their indoctrination. They're playing the role of victim of the traumas and bullshit that they've grown with, and they haven't learned any better. You have an advantage that they don't. Just cultivate it, work with it, help the people along the way that you encounter in your path. Continue to stay honest, continue to stay true to yourself and transparent. Love everyone equally, don't judge, and let the rest take care of itself.
Yeah, like I don't know about you, dude, but like here's the funny thing. I hate to bring this up, but like the reason why I always ask how is because always there's always a time where when I didn't do things like what you did, like just go through my normal days, I somehow uh, I didn't know that this part of my brain or part of myself existed until one day something really did happen to me, and then all of a sudden it triggers up and it blew out of me, like as though it magically appears, and then I was like freaked out. It almost got me, got a hold of my life, and so like I need to know like, have you ever experienced any of this, and how do you deal with it? Because otherwise I would be like, holy shit, no,
Yeah, they're just leaps in your evolution. I've had multiple of them. And
like
sometimes there's a little bit of a mental crisis and mental breakdown that comes along with it too. And it's normal.
but
It's
like, is
it's
there a way in which
normal.
like I can help myself and others along the way that will be able to like in case if one of us, like even including myself, if something happens to one of us, we won't get to a point where like I felt this is abnormal. I don't know if I should continue on. That mindset should go away. Like for real, that mindset that something's abnormal to be doing should go away.
And you're basing that on what? Like you're
This
not
is
doing the way everyone else is?
this mindset has been ingrained from when I was in when I studied counseling psychology. Is like they always had that mindset where they said if something is like far beyond whatever is their so-called norm, they would call that abnormal, and they would start throwing you into drugs and all sorts of stuff. And also like the problem is every time when some of my members have those stuff, they always been told by their family members go see a psychologist, and that's one of the bad ways you can do, to your own family members or your friends is to refer them to a professional that doesn't know anything.
Okay, well, Andy, I'm gonna say this. To me, from where I'm standing, it's very black and white in the sense it's very easy to see what happened to you. You incurred experiences in your life to prepare you for the path that you came here to live. You're entering
Yeah.
into you're entering into this profession. You've experienced the bullshit of these systems. You know what they're about. You continue to learn more about what they're about. It's not a question now about should you keep going or not, how do I keep going or not. This is your path. You've had experiences that have prepared you to be where you are and to undo this kind of damage by helping to restructure the system. And you'll do this by your own practice, your own way of doing things, and that is not abnormal. That is completely normal. To do what comes naturally to you is normal, regardless of how abnormal it seems to anyone else, as long as you're not hurting anyone.
Right,
So,
that's the
so,
thing.
so Andy, just keep going.
Right, it's not about me, but it's about like
No, no, it is about you. It's
I'm talking
all
about like it's like what people how
That
they
that's the
how
path
other
of an
people would
indigo, man.
like how would people treat my clients when I help them?
That's not for you to worry about. That's for your client to take responsibility for. Your job
Mhm.
would then be just to help your client
Facilitate.
recognize that as they change, people in their life will change, their circumstances will change, and that is okay. That's how they're growing. And if they don't want that, then you need to just get them to ask themselves for real. Do you want to grow and change and evolve, or do you want things to stay as they are and continue to deteriorate? And well,
Right.
it's their decision. You can't choose that for them. You just simply you highlight these points. That's it. And then you let them decide. And if they decide that they want to make changes for the better, you coach them along doing that. That's it.
I would have to agree.
And the reason I say it's about you is because this, without you being clear on what you're doing, if your perspectives are diluted, you're questioning your own power and your own understanding, then you're not going to be able to be of service to anyone else. That's why it's all about you. And he's walking away.
Uh, he just caught that. Like, well, he was listening.
I swear to God, I should be getting paid for these things.
It's very, very good advice, man. That's yeah. I mean, that's one of the things. Like, I thought about that with myself too, but my thing is more so. I'm seeing my path is more so like alternative medicine. Um, because there's a lot of things that upset me about the system, but it's not really to do with people. It's just the system. It's just a system that lacks integrity and truth.
That's true. Although I have to admit, I kind of imagine your path being more of like, um, what's the word? Like a free hugger kind of guy, kind of
Yeah.
a makeshift clown, joker type personality that just
Hey,
brings joy and love into people's lives. That you wouldn't be a clinical practitioner of any kind. That you would just be like a creative artist doing all
I
sorts of
mean,
crazy, wacky things and bringing joy into people's lives that way.
I I am kind of like chaos to systems, man. I don't know. I'm like water. Like, I understand the purpose of systems, and I understand, well, at least some of them. I understand the purpose of structure, and I do my best to work with it, but even it seems like even the best I try to work with it, like it always finds some way around. The clown gets out or something. That's actually what I was in school, man. But the
Yeah, I was
funny
gonna say
thing
the class
is
clown.
like, yeah, but like when like there would be questions, see, like the most obvious questions where everybody would know, like um 'cause I didn't really answer that much, but or if I did answer, I mean it would usually be like a funny answer that like people would laugh. Um, but there was sometimes like they'd say something this like what is a chromosome or whatever it was, and like nobody would know the answer. And I just play around and I put my hands up and then I'd say the answer, whatever it was, and I'd get it right, and then people would go like, "Wow, you're a genius." But to most of the people there, they thought like I didn't know anything.
Well, it's easy to form an opinion of someone when they don't stand out.
Yeah, I mean, I just focused on the things that like were relevant to me, and that's how like if something was interesting to me and it stuck like the truth, those were the things I remembered, so I always got the answers.
Yeah, and you being a very sensitive person makes it also easier for you to connect the truth.
True.
I mean,
Well,
truth is
it's
truth is self-evident. So the more connected you are to yourself and to the divine, then the simple truths of the universe are much more clear to you. And so when you see them, you know them. You recognize natural laws, universal laws.
right, right. And I mean, at that point in time, like you know what I'm saying, I was young at that stage of consciousness. I was like four, 14 or so. So, I mean, it was in me, but there was so much indoctrination that, you know, my little being was doing the best that it could, but uh, to most of the people in the class, they just thought I was a pothead, you know.
Hmm.
But I always had the answers when it came to things that people didn't know, or nobody would really have the answer. And
Well,
just certain things, man. Like there were just certain things that I remember in biology class, and like we're supposed to put all these pictures and stickers together and stuff like that. And the teacher came by and he told me, and he like kind of tapped me on the shoulder or whatever. I don't think he grabbed me on the shoulder, but he was just like why don't you do anything? And
can't
I
hear
was
you.
just I was so in my own world, man. It's not like I was high or anything. I was just so in my own world that it didn't feel like I needed to or I could really do anything. I didn't feel grounded there, you know. So it'd always be like the teacher would be talking with all this information, and then I'm like, okay, you need to put up a documentary. 'Cause I always remember documentaries very well, or explain this in an artistic way, or with more pictures, or in a more hands-on, practical way that I can understand this. Just regurgitating information does not do it for me. Does that make sense?
So, anyone can hear me right now?
What's up? YNDA.
Okay, so, yeah, from what you talked about, Michael, and how we are talking
I
about the
can't even hear
mind.
either of you now because you're like Andy just entered whisper mode and
Wait,
Michael.
but wait, did you hear the last part that I said, Brother
Not
Joel?
not really.
Alright,
No,
so,
I was just saying basically like when the teacher was saying like it's like a substitute or something. It's like a helper or something that basically um he was just saying like why don't you do anything? Because we're supposed to be putting like pictures together and sticking them together for something, but I just didn't even feel grounded enough to even begin to do something because I didn't even feel there really.
And what's your question exactly?
It's not really a question. I was just explaining. I was just telling like the story, like basically.
Hmm.
alright, so,
So I
guys,
didn't really feel grounded enough to even like participate in some of the activities they were doing.
Is it really groundedness or the fact that you didn't really care to be there?
Both. I
so,
mean,
guys,
Like it
yeah.
was an environment that wasn't entirely conducive to your growth. You were kind of bored and disconnected from being there, so you were
Yeah,
like,
man. I mean, honestly, like I spent a lot of time washing my hands just so I didn't have to engage in certain things. Um, because I didn't feel. I mean, it's one for feeling like you just don't fit in there, but it was just like I didn't feel like I was totally there. I didn't feel grounded. I felt like there was so much stimulation and with bells going off every time that I felt I was learning something, and then there's just this fast-paced moving type thing. I'm like, how am I supposed to learn anything like this? And the food is shitty and there's fluoride in the water and I don't blame myself.
so yeah, guys, like,
well, you can, if you felt at some point that you were supposed to be fitting in and doing what they were doing, and because you couldn't, you were feeling bad in some way, then take
mhm.
responsibility for the fact that you felt as though You should be doing what you were being told that you should be doing. When in reality is should just be doing what you actually felt like doing.
And
And
that's what I did.
yeah, and so if you feel bad about anything that you weren't following through and expectations set onto you,
Hmm.
take responsibility for the fact that you let yourself feel bad over that rather than stand fully in your truth. Other than
True.
that, you did nothing wrong.
No, I don't feel I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about it. I feel like now that I look at it in a greater respect, there's a compassion. I could look at it from myself now, and I look at it then now, and I'm just like, nah, man. I mean, with all that, with all the fluoride and all the things, just to be able just to say, just to do what you were doing is something that I'm, it's not false pride, but it's proud that I was able to, see through the bullshit in that sense, um,
Do
to
you
a
find,
degree.
did you find yourself then and now as well that your sensitivity to your environment is just like a little too high that it can almost be debilitating?
Yeah.
And that's still true today?
Mm, I think I'm a lot better at shielding it now, and I know grounding techniques that I didn't know back then. So I feel I can handle it a lot better now, but back then I felt like I was all over the place back then.
What I would suggest for you is to whatever shape, form, facsimile you acknowledge a higher power, higher architecture, higher divine intelligence to this universe, whatever
Hmm.
you term that, to engage with it and ask it that it tune down your receptor ability to all of this, to the sensitivity, just to tone it down a bit so that you don't feel
Hmm.
so overwhelmed. And ask for
That's
that.
interesting. Because I mean, I always look at it as like it's a gift at the same time where people are saying you're just being too sensitive, but I can pick up on so many different things. So,
Yeah, and it is definitely a gift. It's a wonderful aptitude. But if it gets to a point where it's overwhelming you, this is where you need to check in with yourself, open that channel of communication to your highest divine intelligence, and ask, yo, I need this to be turned down. Please turn this down. For right now,
mm,
I can't
okay.
handle this much. Please turn this down. You have to ask for it. You have to be open to that exchange in order for the deepest levels of you to be able to change as well. If you don't ask, you're just going to be carried by the wind wherever the wind blows.
That's true.
This way, you can decide when the sail goes up and when the sail goes down.
I like that.
So, does any of you guys have any last words for the audience? Because personally, I found
Yeah,
it.
my last words are going to be good night. It is almost 1 a.m. I should have been asleep 2 hours ago. And yeah, so if anyone tunes into this, I hope that some seeds were imparted and that many good things manifest from it.
All right, and for me, it's like since we talked a lot about the mind and about how we can, how deep we are, I believe we are pretty invincible. The only question is, I want to ask the audience is, where do you stand on your own path to enlightenment? Are you choosing to live your life of limitations? After we talk about this in the webinar, or are you going to choose to be the unlimited? The,
Limitless.
cho- the choice is up to you now.
Live long and prosper.